Israel is contrary to all the rules of history. Never in history did a people spread over the world, disseminated, make a comeback. Never. Not only to the land, but also to the culture, to the language. And only in this country have the children speaking the language of their forefathers, the Bible. Undoubtedly, we were first. Undoubtedly, that was our homeland. Undoubtedly, that we were forced by empires to go to exile. And then the Arab came here by force, too.
Peres was very controversial all his life. He was much more popular at the time when he was working with David Ben-Gurion in the Ministry of Defense, and he was much more of a hawk, a political hawk. Later, he became more and more a dove who tried to make peace with the Palestinians, who created the Oslo agreements. In Israel, Shimon Peres is not credited as he should be for what he did for the country. And most of the Israelis even don't know what he did for the country. When you tell them that he built the nuclear reactor, or he was the architect of the alliance with France, which brought to the Suez War, or you tell them that he was the man behind the operation in Entebbe, they're just surprised. He has a lot of dreams. As long as the new Middle East is the matter, like it changes and people are going to become much more friendly and live in peace, and Gaza is going to become a new Singapore, in this Shimon Peres is a dreamer. He is the most controversial political figure in Israel. Today, that is changing because he was elected president. He is today representing all this strata of the Israeli society. So today, he is very popular, something to which he cannot get used himself. He says to me, listen, I've got 70% of popularity. How does that happen? He was used always to have half and half. Some of them were crazy about him, the other wanted to kill him.
About his greatest success is that Israel exists, because Israel was heavily threatened, and I think he managed to make sure that the Arab countries would consider Israel a fait accompli and not something you can get rid of. On the other hand, obviously the greatest failure is not having signed yet a peace treaty. And I am sure that peace is there. All we have to do is sign.
I have to repeat again, Your Excellency, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I was born in Belarus, which at the time was under the Polish government. It was a Jewish small town, a shtetl, only Jewish. The predominant languages were Hebrew, Yiddish, and Russian. So I got my education in a Hebrew school. My first language was Hebrew. My father had forests and produced wood. My mother worked in a library, and she gave me a taste for books. My grandfather was my real educator, and he used to teach me the Bible. He was a rabbi, but a modern one. He played the violin, he read Tolstoy, he read Dostoevsky. The whole town was Zionist, so was my family. Half of them came to Israel. Half of them, unfortunately, were late to come and were exterminated by the Nazis. The whole Jewish community was forced to go to the synagogue, headed by my grandfather. It was a wooden synagogue. They were closed in the synagogue. They went with the talis on their shoulders, and they were burned alive, all of them. My father went to Israel in 1932. My mother and my brother and myself came 2 years later, in 1934. We were settled in Tel Aviv. Then I joined in a youth movement. And I was very active in the youth movement, the largest youth movement of Israel. At an early age, when I was 19 or something like it, I was elected to become the Secretary General of the movement. The head of the group that I joined in was David Ben-Gurion, the founder of the state. After studying in the agricultural school, I went to a kibbutz, became a member of a kibbutz. I married Sonia, whom I met at the agricultural school. She came with me to the kibbutz. Our first daughter was born there. And I was in the kibbutz until 1947, at the age of 24.
And I was very young. I was walking around with my father, and my father said this was the most beautiful place on earth, and I believed him. But this remains the place where not only the state of Israel was created, but the kibbutz movement was created, where the utopia of a fair, democratic, modern Israel was created.
I was at that time very close to Ben-Gurion already. I was in many ways his right-hand man. And Ben-Gurion was shocked when he learned that after the Holocaust, and in spite of the Holocaust, the ones who survived the Holocaust couldn't find a shelter. All the doors were closed, including the doors of Israel, that was under the British mandate. So Ben-Gurion says the most urgent thing is to create a Jewish state, no matter about the size of the land, to have those people who went through the Holocaust find a haven for their life. It's an all the accusers, time has come that they will search themselves. What happened during the Holocaust? Where have they been? What did they do? Why did they close the doors? I thought Ben-Gurion was right. He says we have to have the state right away and sacrifice land and save the people. And I was totally identified with him. I felt he's honest, he's historic.
Argentina, abstention. Australia, yes. Soviet Union, yes.
There was a United Nations resolution that has decided on a partition to create an Israeli state, an Arab state. We agreed, they refused. The whole country was dancing and singing. It's hard to describe. There was just one sad person in Jerusalem. That was Ben-Gurion. He stood up, I was near him, and I said, tonight they dance and sing, tomorrow they'll spill blood. And the next morning, the attack began. were attacked by 7 Arab armies. The Arabs at that time counted 40 million people. The Jewish community was 650,000 people. During the War of the Independence, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who, by the way, tried to ally himself with Hitler, he went to Germany, signed an agreement with Hitler, called upon the Palestinians to leave the land, and he told them, we shall come back by force. And we told them to stay. So many Arabs stayed, some Arabs ran away. They created their own problems.
Well, we have always had a crisis in leadership. As Palestinians, historically, I can see that. We've had historical leaders, we've had larger-than-life leaders, but we've also had tribal leaders. We've had people who, at that time, who misread the situation, who made the wrong decisions, and we even had leaders who distorted the Palestinian reality by resorting to corruption and abuse of power. So we had a long history of a crisis in leadership. But I think it is much more than just a question of one leader in Palestine. If we had had Ben-Gurion or, you know, somebody larger than life, I think it's a question of, at that time it was international, let's say global. There were historical forces at work. We were the unwitting victims of a series of events. And we came at the culmination of a very painful history, particularly in the West and particularly in the post-colonial era, in which the Palestinians became the victims, in which it was seen the creation of the State of Israel as a solution to many problems and issues, but at the same time they didn't look at it as a trigger for future problems, instabilities, and other injustices.
And then also they forced, in fact, 1 million Jewish people who resided in the Arab lands to leave the countries and come here. So the number of the Jewish refugees from Arab land was greater. And there was an embargo against Israel in spite of the fact that many countries voted for it. And God actually asked me to try to break the embargo because he felt that without it we cannot go on and fight. We have had to get our arms illegally because of the embargo. And the War of Independence lasted for a year time. It was a very difficult war. We lost some of our best young people. But we won the war. We know it's not the end of the story. We have to prepare for another one. After the War of Independence, the Russians provided to the Arabs modern arms, jet planes, long-range cannons, tanks, missiles, and our hands were empty. There was a danger that they will attack us again and they could have finished us.
And he came to Ben-Gurion and said to him, I want to go to America to go and study. And Ben-Gurion said, okay, but you'll work in the delegation of the Ministry of Defense, which is in New York. And that's what Peres did. And that was buying all kinds of planes and weapons and smuggling them to Israel because America had imposed a total embargo on the weapons. That was Peres's job, and it reads today like an adventure. He met all kinds of shady characters. He flew to Batista's Cuba and got from them all kinds of support, like they were buying weapons in our name. He bought boats and warships in Colombia, and he bought mosquito planes and other planes in America, and they were smuggled via the North Pole, Europe, and into Israel. And then he met a man called Al Schwimmer.
Well, we had to have a way to get all kinds of war material and airplanes over to Palestine, Israel. What we did was we bought surplus aircraft in the United States. It was after World War II, and there were a lot of American-built aircraft that had been declared surplus by the U.S. Government. And we bought them presumably for Mexico, where we established a company, Mexican Airlines, and from there transferred them on to Palestine.
Al Schwimmer is one of the greatest patriots and one of the bravest men I met in my life. Totally devoted, with a born sense of leadership, with a strategic decision to serve his people and serve his land.
And when Shimon Peres came to my place in Burbank, this was after the creation of the state, after the war, and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I set up a place here called Schwimmer Aviation. I'm making a living. Repairing, overhauling airplanes and airplane engines." So he said, "Do we have something like this in Israel?" And I said, "No." So I said, "What are you doing here? I want you to come back to Israel and do this in Israel." I said, "Okay, I'm coming." I come back to Israel. There was to set up Israel Aircraft Industries. And in the papers in the beginning, it was stated, "We don't need such a thing in Israel. What do we need it for?" But Ben-Gurion said, "You don't listen. You go ahead and you do it," which we did. And it wound up to be the #1 exporter of technology and technological products, including electronics and everything else that came in later on from Israel, it is today.
Shimon Peres is a man with a tremendous energy, and he is able, more than anybody else, to accomplish things, to carry them out. That was why he was called the doer in Ben-Gurion's time. He was always ready to take tremendous tasks upon himself and to carry them out.
There were only 3 countries that produced heavy arms. It was Great Britain, United States, and France. Great Britain refused, the United States refused. They even didn't sell us rifles. And about France, people didn't believe that they will do it. But Ben-Gurion told me to try in France. I tried in France.
Everybody tried to discourage him and to mock him and ridicule him. He went to France and kept meeting people, leaders, politicians, ministers, members of parliament, journalists, army officers, tens and scores of people every day, till he was sometimes fainting at night of fatigue. But finally succeeded to create this tremendous network in France, which partly still exists until today.
All my childhood, from 6, say, to 14, my father was dealing with France. He was traveling back and forth all the time. At that time, it was secret. Nobody knew about it. Nobody talked about it. So the only person my father could talk to was me, a little girl who was not threatening in any way and who wouldn't talk about it to anybody else. And my father was discovering a country that was totally different from ours.
So I didn't know French. I know very little about France. But I think Ben-Gurion elected me because of my enthusiasm, not because of my knowledge. Particularly that all the other people didn't believe in it. I was the only one who believed. And I got tremendous support in France, unbelievable, from all walks of life, from the goal to the people that were working at the port. And actually, we broke the embargo. Since then, Israel in the 60 years went through another 6 wars. All told, we had 7 wars in 60 years. The first, the second, the third, and the fourth war were fought basically with French arms.
About him and Moshe Dayan, who was his friend, and they went together with Ben-Gurion, they used to say that Shimon Peres knows how to build power and Dayan knows how to use power. Shimon Peres admired Dayan, he loved Dayan, and he supported him to the last day I saw him, Dayan active.
When my daughter, who is the oldest, was 6 years old, Diane loved her very much. She used to take her to his excavations. And they asked her, what sort of a regime do you have in your family? Dictatorship, democracy? Are you free at home or not? And at 6 years old, she says, we have a coalition.
My family was a coalition. The people did not necessarily agree about everything, but they lived together beautifully.
I thought to myself, look, it's a bit strange. France gives us arms. The Americans gives us finance. German, nothing. And then I decided to go and meet Franz Joseph Strauss.
And they met secretly once in Bonn and once in his village. And Strauss was supposed to be very much right-wing. Some of them even called him a Nazi because he had fought in the Second World War. And Paris succeeded to convince him in a meeting of about 5 hours that Germany must help Israel.
He has the brilliant mind. And I explained to him, I says, how come? He says that he was very young when the Nazis came in. He was in the anti-air battalion. And he told me, I don't have a future in Germany because I'm a Bavarian, I'm son of a butcher and the Minister of Defense. But in spite of it, I'm going to help you. I need the support of Adenauer.
Strauss decided to help Israel for 2 reasons. First, he saw in Israel a kind of barrage which can stop the Russian influence in the Middle East. And second, because of the guilt feelings both of him and of Adenauer about the plight of the Jewish people in the hands of Nazi Germany. So these 2 people decided to help Israel, and Peres succeeded to obtain from them the deliveries of huge quantities of weapons to Israel for no fee at all, gratis. They were just given actually as a gift from Germany in total secrecy.
He was all the time on mission, had no private time, never had any private time. It was always clear that if he had to make a choice, it would be public life rather than private life. When you grow up with it, you get used to it. And you use the best that you can get out of the time where he's around. And he was around also.
And we're a happy family. And they know that their father didn't go to bars and nightclubs. He served the country. They know that they have had to serve. They are not children. They know exactly what's happening. I never heard the slightest complaint in my family.
When I met Peres, I met Sonia with him. They were inseparable, even in politics. Sonia is a very straight woman. She has very clear views. She wanted to live in a kibbutz. For her, life was the kibbutz. She told him, Shimon, enough. I'm not going ahead with this public life. It was about 1992, and she cut it like with a knife. The nuclear reactor is a fact. What they won't tell you officially is that we have a nuclear striking force, nuclear bomb. The official Israeli position was fixed by Shimon Peres in April of 1963 when he was in Washington and he met with President Kennedy. Kennedy was very much against the nuclear project and he exerted a very, very strong pressure on Israel not to develop nuclear weapons.
When President Kennedy asked me, that was the first time, what are our intentions? I told him that Israel will never be the first to introduce a nuclear bomb in the Middle East, which we didn't. And then we discovered, you said, no secret, thank you very much. We discovered that suspicion is enough.
Shimon Peres and Ben-Gurion, to a lesser degree, were the only two Israeli leaders who were for building a nuclear reactor. The Israeli nuclear scientists, and we have very good nuclear scientists, were all against it. They all said that's crazy. We can never build a nuclear reactor. We cannot compare to the Americans with the Manhattan Project. That's not for us. So Peres said, okay, don't help. So he went to the Technion and found young, enthusiastic engineers who wanted to make their proofs and show that they can do something. And he mobilized them.
Amro Moussa is the secretary of the Arab League, used to be the foreign minister of Egypt. We were good friends. And he says, Shimon, take me to the Mona, let me have a look there. I told him, are you crazy? I shall take you to the Mona. You'll say there is nothing there. So you'll stop being suspicious. You'll stop being suspicious, you'll begin to be aggressive. I don't want to attack anybody. I don't want to have military superiority. It's not my dream. I would like that people will stop threatening our life. One Holocaust in 100 years, for us, it's enough. See if I can postpone it. And look at Ahmadinejad. He speaks like a crazy man. And who can guarantee that he's not serious? Who can? They said also about Hitler the same. You know, Europe, you asked me about Europe. And excuse me for saying straightforward. Europe was always right, but always late. Late on the communists, late on the Nazis, and paid a very high cost.
I don't think targeting civilians or innocent bystanders or anything should have any acceptance by anybody. At the same time, I think it was the age of revolutions. Again, in context, there were global revolutions all over the world. It was a period of armed struggle. The Palestinian revolution was at the forefront of armed struggle and popular revolutions, getting rid of situations of injustice, of occupation, of colonial rule, of apartheid, of discrimination, and so on. So in that context, there was a Palestinian revolution. It's important that there was one. Some of the things that it did were reprehensible, yes. But I don't condemn the whole revolution, no. It was a revolution in order to ascertain our rights, our right to freedom, our right to our own homeland, our right to recognition, dignity. So quite often, and like in all revolutions, mistakes are made. And resorting to this type of violence is counterproductive and isn't morally reprehensible.
From the beginning, after the plane was hijacked and brought to the Air France plane, brought to Entebbe, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister, did not believe there is any possibility to rescue the hostages. Therefore, he pressed all the time from the first day to negotiate and to release the terrorists who were in Israeli prisons in exchange for the hostages. Peres from the start said, we have to find a solution, a military solution. We cannot afford to yield to the terrorists, because if we yield once, we'll yield forever. And Peres was all alone preparing that plan with several generals and colonels. And when the operation was finally carried out, and we found out that everything had worked to perfection and the hostages had been released and they were on their way now back home, General Gur, the commander-in-chief of the army, called the general staff, and we have his speech, and he said, let's raise a toast. He said, tomorrow everybody is going to be the father of this success. But let me tell you, there was one man who pushed up and down and did not stop and did not rest until he succeeded to carry this out. And this one man is Shimon Peres, the Minister of Defense. He is the one who deserves all the credit. Today you ask people who carried out the Entebbe operation. They'll tell you the army, of course. They'll tell you, of course, about the hero, Yoni Netanyahu, the brother of Benjamin Netanyahu, our former prime minister. Nobody will tell you Shimon Peres, and he was actually the real force behind it.
Neither I nor my family could ever forget the kindness that he treated us at the hour of greatest pain that we experienced in our lives, and also the genuine pain that he felt with the death of my brother. This always created a certain bond, a certain relationship that, despite political differences, which I suppose have narrowed over the years, but despite whatever political differences we had, I always felt a certain kinship to Shimon. He has his own, he has many credits in the history of Israel. But for me, there was a personal kindness that I always remember, and I tried in my own way to reciprocate by having even disagreements always aired on the substantive level and never descend to personal attacks, because personally I like him very much, and sometimes in many other ways too.
We went to occupy anybody. We were attacked. We defended our land. We won the territories. The one that wanted to make peace with us, Egypt, for example, got back all the land, all the water, all the oil. Jordan, that wanted to make peace with us, got back all the land and all the water. The Palestinians were split. They didn't exist, by the way. Don't forget that until Oslo, there wasn't a Palestinian personality. There wasn't a Palestinian partner, but an organized group of terrorists. But did you expect us not to defend our lives?
Peres was Minister of Defense in the government of Yitzhak Rabin from 1974 to 1977. He was definitely a hawk then, and he helped to create the first settlements in the area of Samaria. And he was really, he was very tough, and he was, by the way, very much admired for his position in our crazy country. But when, in 1977, Shimon Peres became the chairman of the Labour Party, and then took the place the change in his attitude. First of all, Peres became very active in the Socialist International. He met people like Olaf Palme, Bruno Kreisky, François Mitterrand, Mario Soares, all kind of European leaders were all socialists and very, very open to the Palestinian question. And that, I would say, moderated his views very much. At that time, the Dimona nuclear reactor was active. Israel had become a nuclear power. And Shimon Peres believed that now that we are so strong and our existence is guaranteed, we can afford to be generous to our neighbors and take risks which we were not ready to take before in order to achieve peace with them. All these reasons made him shift from his position as a hawk to a position as a dove.
And people forget the nuclear program and the settlements and all that and talk about, peace, but he did not produce peace. He did not produce a peace agenda. He did not produce a peace camp. He produced lots of rhetoric about economy and peace.
This was the start, not only between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It was a start in the Middle East.
What went wrong is what's going on wrong. I mean, first of all, there were some nice things. We recognized the Palestinian people. They recognized the Jewish state. We agreed on the principle of borders, which were more or less 242, 338, or 67 borders, plus minus. The problem was that they couldn't create a state, they couldn't create a government. They were splitting and splitting, and Arafat, with whom I negotiated years and years and years, couldn't establish one authority.
Rabin and Peres signed the agreement, but they did not stop settlements, activities. They did not honor dates. They said no sacred dates. They did not honor that there was a deadline in 1999 to make a Palestinian state next to the state of Israel in the 67 border.
When you postpone all the core issues, the issues that form the essence of the conflict, like the land, settlements, and boundaries, like Jerusalem, the capital, the soul of Palestine, like refugees, the whole, legitimacy of and human and demographic legitimacy of Palestine. You postpone all these issues, and you do not get assurances that they will not be prejudged, then you're in trouble.
President Arafat could not pass the transition from a revolutionary to a statesman. Running a revolution cannot be conducted with the elements of nation building. And now, because we did not succeed to produce one authority, one gun, and the rule of law, this was capitalized by extremists on our side who wanted to sabotage the peace process.
And look today, we didn't split the Palestinians. With the arguments are zero. But you have here the Hamas intervention, you have the Iranians. The Iranians want to establish again a religious empire with the help of enriched uranium. They have the support of Hamas. They have the support of the Hezbollah. Hezbollah is destroying Lebanon. Hamas is trying to destroy the Palestinians. Yet, on the other side, there are already people for peace among the Palestinians, like Abu Mazen, Fayyad, whom we respect, and we sit and talk with them.
Rabin hated Shimon Peres. Peres was everything that Rabin was not. He was a very open man. He was a party leader. He was the leader of the Labour Party. He knew how to work with foreign leaders. Rabin was a very shy, very introvert man, and he didn't like Peres. And this hatred of the Rabin side remained all along their relationship and all along the life of Rabin. The latest fight between them was the very moment, a few minutes before Rabin was assassinated. They had another quarrel. They learned to work together, in spite of the fact they didn't like each other. But Rabin was assassinated, and for Shimon Peres it was a tremendous shock, which the public did not understand. So when Netanyahu was elected and became prime minister and started carrying out his policy and found out that he had no idea how to carry out the policy with Yasser Arafat and with the Oslo agreements, he turned to Peres. And something very strange happened. In many nights, Peres would put on a disguise, and in the cars of the Secret Service, he would be brought to the house of Netanyahu, the prime minister, and they will be working the entire night, and Peres would advise him how to talk to Arafat, what to do, how to carry out the negotiations with the Palestinians.
I wanted to get indeed his reading on the Palestinian leadership and what it is he thought that might be done under the circumstances. We had some fruitful discussions.
Mr. Peres, with the two delegations, had achieved something concrete and very positive.
Arafat wasn't a man of peace. I think this was the prime mistake of the Oslo Accords. I thought that Arafat was insincere. I was sure that he would use the territory that we would hand over to him to launch terror attacks against us. Unfortunately, he confirmed everything that I feared, and eventually he himself brought the process to a halt at Camp David, the Camp David conference in the year 2000. Although he received everything, he gave us in return the Intifada, that is the terror assaults of suicide bombings in our cities.
They have enough rockets to cause damage. They don't have enough strength to overpower us. So would they have the strength to overpower us? They would do it. And which country in the world, including Holland, would agree that day in, day out, their children will be attacked for no reason with rockets, particularly after Israel left Gaza? There are not a single soldier, not a single civilian. We dismantled our settlements. It's in their hand. What do they want?
Because what Israel did, what Sharon did in Gaza before he left, he destroyed my police. He destroyed my national security. He kept my young policemen without guns, without bullets, while Hamas was buying all the weapons coming from everywhere. Hamas doing the coup d'etat in Gaza is the worst thing that happened to Palestinians in 1967. This is the worst thing that happened to us. And Hamas, first of all, it's a Palestinian movement. It's a movement that won the elections. And it's a movement that has staged a coup d'etat against itself and against its people.
Nobody fears that the Hamas can tomorrow attack Israel and conquer or destroy a part of Israel. Same thing with the Hezbollah. They know that the moment we have to speak about war, they can use only guerrilla fighting in their own country. The problem with Iran is that Iran is able, first of all, to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, and Iran is fanatic enough to be ready to sacrifice a large part of its population as a cost to get the Jewish state wiped out of the map.
I need a strong Iran. I need a peaceful Iran. I need a prosperous Iran. Help me. And instead of speaking about canceling Israel from the map, speak about adding Palestine to the map. That's how you help me as a Palestinian and as Iran.
Paris today will be in favor of taking every possible measure to destroy the nuclear program of Iran, definitely.
Israel doesn't have any ambition to attack anybody. But in the case of Iran, you know, in Iraq, the threat was only against Israel. Iran is a threat to Holland as well. Don't make the same mistake. If a country loses its sense of proportion, if a country makes the enriched uranium a religion, if they begin to talk nonsense, if they're beginning to build long-range missiles, and God knows, maybe they will enable terrorists to have nuclear devices, the world will become ungovernable. So we think the responsibility for what's going to happen in Iran is worldwide, not Israeli. And I don't think that we are the leader of the world. We don't intend to trump. And I think the world has to decide.
Die.
My father's legacy is always looking to the future, always coming up with new ideas, trying new ways of life, culture, books and books. The idea that politics should not be divorced from culture, from reading, from dreaming, that people should be pragmatic and they could live together. And the most interesting legacy is what it means to be a national home for the Jews, yet respecting your neighbors and living in peace with them. So I think the combination of the two is a beautiful legacy.
We are a Jewish state because there is a Jewish majority. If she'll stop being a majority, it won't be a Jewish state. We are not a Jewish state by force, but by numbers. And in order to keep our majority, we are giving back land. We agreed to give back to the, not back. Don't forget there was never a Palestinian state. Now talking about the Arab attitude. The West Bank was under the Jordanians. They never offered it to the Palestinians. Gaza was under the Egyptians. They never offered it to the Palestinians. The first to do so, to recognize a Palestinian personality, to tell them we shall give you back almost all of the land, were us. Look, we didn't create pyramids, we didn't create great buildings, the Acropolis, nothing whatsoever. But we created a book. In that book, you have 169 words that sums up the 10 Commandments. Over the last thousands of years, all the attempts to change it were in vain. Take out the 10 Commandments, the Western civilization doesn't have any foundation. So we would like to be as old as our 10 Commandments and as modern as the New Age, make a living on high technology, and continue our tradition as a people who are fighting for a better world with more demands.